Hi and welcome to Knit with Hannah. I'm Hannah. We're talking knitting for profit again, and today we're looking at the pricing lessons you can get from the high street. Hi and welcome to Knit with Hannah. I'm Hannah. I'm here with Knitting Natter to help you learn to knit the easy way. So you can get pricing lessons from the high street. Last week we looked at niching lessons you can find in the high street. So last week we learnt that niching is your comfortable position in the marketplace. That's what we also need to think about when it comes to pricing. So if you like knitting high quality items from high quality yarns, you are hand making these as an artisan, you need to remember that those high quality finished items will also need high quality prices. You will value what you finish knitting, and other people need to value it too. They need to sit in the niche very comfortably. If we look at the different shops out there, if we take 3 different shops, we'll look at a budget shop, a middle shop like John Lewis, and then we'll look at a really high artisan place like Harrods, for example. You will very well recognise that different people going to those shops will have different budgets. You may start with a different budget than someone else starting out a knitting business. I started out with a very low budget. I didn't have much to start off with. So I opted for the best quality yarn I could find, but it was a lower budget, high quality yarn. Someone else may be out there and say, well, I've just finished a corporate job. I'm investing a ton in this business. I'm not starting from nothing. I'm going to invest every single penny I can in this. So you bet I am buying the best high quality skeins of yarn that I can afford. I'm going to get a friend down the road who makes handmade yarn to make every single skein for me. She will hand dye it, I will choose the colours, and you bet the finished items will belong in Harrods. When I started out and I was selling what I knitted, I was starting at a much lower budget. So realise that the prices from the high street, they are varied because they are suitable for different customers. You need to realise where you sit in that. But remember, items that you buy in a shop are very, very likely machine made. You are hand knitting. So when you put a price on something, that is something that you also need to remember. This isn't a machine knitting it for you. And also remember, this isn't a machine knitting a big long roll of knitted fabric and then someone cutting it up and sewing it together. Because yes, some jumpers come like that. Some items on the high street that are supposedly knitted actually is just a bolt of fabric that's being sewn together with a sewing machine. Disappointing, I know, but it's the truth. So you are hand knitting pieces, you're sewing them together, you are finishing them by hand. This is not something that you will say it belongs like a budget price in a Primark or a Lidl. This is the middle of the road, or it's a much higher price depending on where your materials start and how much you invest as you begin. So remember that. The prices on the high street reflect the different budgets that are out there. They reflect the different time, the materials, and the different designs that have gone into each piece. Now, this is something that we all recognise in the high street. This next point I just want you to remember is something you do not have to compete with. I'm going to talk about sales. And when I mean sales, I mean offers, discounts, I mean percentages off. And you look at the high street and they do this. They have a mid-season sale, they have an end-season sale, they have a bargain weekend, they have a free delivery weekend. And guess what? You need to recognise that you do not have to compete with having a sale every 2 months. Or just because it's a bank holiday weekend, you do not have to do free delivery. This is your choice. You are a handmade business. Everything you sell is unique. You're an artisan business because you are making every single thing by hand. So do not have to compete with that. But let's learn some lessons from it. When a shop buys in stock, designs their own stock, has their own factories making it, or they outsource to a factory and that factory exclusively only makes items for them, they bring that in at a price that they can afford, and then they increase that price by at least 50%, nearer 70% sometimes. If you've ever worked in retail, you may well have seen your manager come out that maybe there's a fault in a skirt, perhaps the seam has ripped, and someone at the retailer said, "Oh, the seam's ripped, I'm really annoyed with this, it's the last one you've got in my size, any chance I can get it for a discount, and I'm happy to go home and sew the seam up myself." The manager will come out and say, "Well, yeah, we can reduce it by this much for you," and the person goes away quite happily. The manager's got this glint in her eye and she winks at you and goes, "I could have reduced that further, you know," but there wasn't any haggling. So maybe they've reduced it by 40%, they're still making a profit. Quite possibly, they could even have made a profit if it had been reduced by 70%. Isn't that shocking? So when you're buying the materials, remember that. That is a small percentage of your final cost. That's a small percentage of your final price. Please recognise that the time that goes into it makes a whole lot of difference as well. So if you're knitting something and it takes you 10 hours to knit it, but you've only used, say, £20 worth of materials, guess what? Especially if you're buying those materials wholesale, it's a lower price as well, then you recognise that the time that goes into it is a large part of that. You may say, okay, well, I'll lose half of that time if I have a sale, but you're still making a profit as far as your books are concerned. So recognise that high street stores, online stores, put that into the equation when they are setting prices. You need to be willing to do that as well, not because you will have a sale every 2 months, but because if you ever want to do a free delivery weekend, or you need to say, "I've got so much stock sitting here, I really don't want to sell that particular pattern or those particular items anymore. Let's just put them in as a weekend deal, or for a week I'll sell everything off at a lower price." And you will still make a profit, remove the time from it, and maybe you'll still pay yourself for 2 hours work instead of the 10. But that profit, the material profit that you see in your bookkeeping, is what makes the difference. The next lesson from the high street is to remember that customers let themselves walk into a shop. If they can't afford the price, even though they want the finished item, they walk out again. That's it. Very, very rarely will you have someone walk up to the till and say, "I want to haggle on this because I can't afford the price that you've set." Very rarely will they do that. It will be, "Oh, I really love that. I'll go away and save up for it and then come back and buy it next week or in a month's time." And people will do that with you as well. But remember, you set the price because there's a particular customer out there with a budget who you know can purchase it. Maybe you've sold it before. Maybe you've seen very similar items at very similar prices out there. Forget the comparisonitis, but you've just been doing some market research and you know that those prices for very similar items actually make sense. So you don't have to haggle with your customers, and no way do you have to think that people will come to your shop, say, "I can't afford it," and actually get really upset and angry with you. No, they will turn away and say, "I'll go to a different shop." They will not purchase that thing from you. Do not worry that you're turning away customers. You're turning away customers who probably wouldn't be long-term customers anyway. The different shops are out there on the high street to serve different people. You cannot serve everybody. If every single person who came to your shop, who visited your shop, be that on website, be that on Etsy, be that an in-person stall at a craft fair, or even at the local boutique, and you have a little corner there with your handmade items in. Every single person who looked at an item, who picked it up, who ummed and ahed about whether or not they wanted it, if they said, "I'm going to have it," you would not have enough hours in the day to knit every single person who wanted one and a finished piece. That's what the marketplace is about. It's so that people have choice. You can serve your customers, someone else can serve their customers, and someone else can serve their customers. As I said before, we have different grocery shops on the high street because in one town, one store could not serve everybody. It's that simple. We need the different stores. You need knitters alongside you knitting their patterns just as much as you knit up your patterns, and everybody is needed. It's because you do not have enough time in the day to knit a hat for every single person in your local town. You do not. There has to be other knitters out there as well. So just remember that. That's why we set the prices at a particular point, because that's the finished value of the item once it's knitted. And then people will say, I agree to that price, or I don't agree to that price, or actually I'm not that big a fan of the finished item that you've knitted anyway, so I'm walking away and finding something else to buy. It's that simple. Okay, so those are the pricing lessons from the high street. Remember your niche. Your finished item, your price matches your customer. And remember that you need to have a profit sat there in your price. It seems like a scam, but no, it isn't. You need that profit to continue investing in your business. You need that profit to invest in the yarn that you need to have for the next collection. You need that profit to pay yourself. You need that profit to pay for your new website. You need that profit. It's part of running a business. And if you sell something for a profit, it's not a scam at all. That's what this is all about, and that's how shops have worked, have grown, have built strong businesses that we all know and love on the high street. That's what they're for. And that's why we're in business as well. And remember the last one. If a customer cannot afford the price or does not want to pay the price, guess what? They'll go to someone else where the price is different. They may well regret it, because perhaps they'll go and pay for something that isn't such good quality. They just said, I don't want to pay that price. But there will be customers out there who will pay that price. That's why your niche in that market is particularly suitable to you, and it's what your customers want as well. They will come back to you. They will return to you. They will be your returning customers because they appreciate you, the finished items, the wear, the use they get out of the finished items, and the price they pay. They appreciate it. They know that you put a value on what you finish knitting, and they appreciate that value as well. Okay, thank you so much for joining me today for the pricing lessons from the high street. I will be back next week with another Knitting for Profit video. And of course, just as I said last week, we have a free workshop at the end of this month. Do come and join me for that. If you want to sign up, the link is in the description below. So this month, I'm also retiring the first profitable knitting course that I sold, and I've created that over 3 years ago. I have decided that my business has moved on. I've learned so many more lessons myself. Instead of updating it, I want to add a couple more workshops to the profitable knitting workshops that I created last year, and you can then start learning from that base instead of the Profitable Knitting Secrets course that I created before. So if you want to join us for those workshops this summer, and if you want to join us for that free workshop at the end of this month, then do sign up below. I'll give you lots more details about all of those things as the month continues. And do join me for that free workshop, of course. And of course, I'd love to see you next week for another Knitting for Profit video. I will be back next Tuesday. Do subscribe and click on the bell for notifications. I'm here every Tuesday, every week with a new knitting video. This month we are talking about profitable knitting, but we will be sitting there with stitches on needles again as soon as June appears, and we start talking about other knitting related topics too. Okay, thanks so much for joining me. I will see you again soon. Bye for now. Happy knitting.